welcome to the Government Operations and Regulations Committee. Today is Tuesday, July 18th. It's 4:30 p.m. and I do detect a quorum with Council Members Young, Withers. Council Member Swope was just in here, but he's back in that other committee. Council Member Cash and Council Member Parker. So, and of course myself. So 5 present currently. For the public comment portion of the meeting, no one signed up, so we'll move on past that. Certainly, if people want to sign up for the next time, then we'll hear from them the next time. And we have a couple resolutions and then some bills. The first resolution is RS 2023-2311 by Benedict. It exempts Sables located at 1301 McGavick Pike from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit pursuant to section 7.08.090.e of the Metropolitan Code. Could I get a motion? Well, I'll make the motion.
I'll move it for you.
All right. So, and it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
That's a good minimum distance from.
I'll go back in there.
What's the minimum? I know that you've canvassed the entire neighborhood and got approval from the neighborhood, but what was the distance?
We did, thank you, Councilor Curtis Harrington, Belch Lakes Harrington on here, on behalf of Sabels. We, I think, knocked on 12 or 16 doors, and I think we got a 60% rate, unbelievably, of doors being answered. Did so along with Dave Mitchell, owner and operator of Mitchell's Deli, which is a beloved restaurant there in the neighborhood, which is my neighborhood now too. And we received no opposition. And so if any opposition has been, voiced or vocalized, I'd be
What's the distance? Is it a church?
It is a home. And I believe it's 80 some odd feet.
Okay.
There is a house
right on
directly
residential.
next to it, which is no longer being used as a residence,
Got
which
it.
is now an office.
Right on. Okay.
And so I believe it's 85 feet, 88 feet, something
From
like
the
that.
residence.
And it's on the other side of some extensive vegetation, like some 20-foot trees or so. So,
Sorry, I couldn't remember what the obstacle was there. So cool.
yeah, just restriction to a residence, single-family dwelling.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Any other questions? Any other discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 5 in favor, 0 against. Next, we have RS 2023-2312 by Welsh. It exempts Fuego Bites located at 2521B Nolensville Pike from the minimum distance requirements for obtaining a beer permit pursuant to section 7.08.090.e of the Metropolitan Code. Could I get a motion?
So moved.
Second? All right, it's moved and seconded. I spoke with Councilmember Welsh in the committee that she's in right now, which is a committee that I was in, and this is near a church, and she had no opposition from the community, and she asked that we approve. Any discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Motion carries 5 in favor, 0 against. Now on to bills on second reading. We have BL 2023-2005 by Johnston. This amends Chapter 3.52 of the Metropolitan Code to require that employees of the metropolitan government receive annual salary increases that reflect cost of living adjustment consistent with the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers. Could I get a motion?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Councilmember Johnston, can you?
Hi. So I brought this forth because we had a lot of conversation around the COLA this year, and it's unfortunate that it takes 2 or 3 years for us to really understand kind of pay plans and all this kind of stuff. But COLA is always a point of contention. It's always we're jockeying to try to increase that, or we have for the past 3 years anyway, or 4 budgets now. And it just struck me that we do it so arbitrarily. The cost of living adjustment was created by the federal government in 1975 to make sure that folks that were on fixed income, their buying power was what it should be. So if inflation is up for 5%, theoretically your buying power is down by roughly 5%. And so that's why cost of living adjustment, the COLA, goes up 5% because that's what CPI is, which is inflation. So I just am trying to take away the objective or subjective way that we handle COLA, because COLA is not compensation. COLA is a leveling out of due to cost increase for lots of different things. I've gotten an email from Metro Legal. There's lots of reasons why I can't do this. It basically needs a charter amendment, which is all fine and good. I do think it's worth the conversation, which is why I moved for a 2-meeting deferral yesterday in budget, and I will likely withdraw on the floor, but I do think that it's worth a conversation, and I will be changing to a resolution to include the study, the $1 million study that we're doing for our pay plan study, for them to really look at COLA, how we determine that, who is able to adjust that, and I'm also gonna throw in the reverse slotting, because I think that needs to be looked at too. So, yes.
One suggestion I would have for that study is, is it like, so I'm a little bit wary of having expenditure increases like baked in without a corresponding revenue increase. So like if we're going to make what could be very large, as we've seen in recent years with inflation, making sure that there's if we're mandating that there's a revenue component there to pay for it.
Sure, and so that is a challenge. The point though is that if you want to raise someone's wages or salaries, raise the wages or salaries, we shouldn't be using that as a slush. There were years when inflation was 0.1%, and yet we gave them 3.1% because we quote unquote felt sorry for them. Well, that's not what COLA is for. And so they understand, and I've talked to all the unions, they understand it cuts both ways. When inflation is low, COLA is low. When inflation is high, the COLA should be high, because that's what it is. It's not a subjective thing. It's measured every single month based off of tons of data, so you know what it is. It would be a challenge if we had 17%, inflation, obviously. And so I think that's why it's important for them to study it, because maybe we don't need a COLA. Maybe we just need to pay people the way we need to pay them. But that's why I'm saying let's look at it. Let's see where we are, and is there something where if it is crazy high, that we have a way to mitigate that.
Well, yeah, I would just say, like, again, you know how hard it is to find money
Sure.
in the budget to do anything, and we know that paying our employees is a priority, but, if that's gonna become sort of automatic as it relates to inflation, I would want in the study what is an automatic inflationary.
Yeah, and we're paying
Tax
them $1 million,
increase.
so I'm hoping
Like a
we're gonna
revenue
get a really
increase.
good answer.
Yeah.
Councilmember Cash?
Yeah, so I'm assuming this metropolitan government, this includes metro government employees, not school employees.
Correct,
Right.
it's Metro.
And we don't have the authority to do this for the school board, I'm assuming.
No.
And so, I'm leading up to, I think if we have this discussion, that we need to make sure that we can't do it for them, but they need to know, hey, we're having this discussion. There's some ways that I think it would even be more important for them to do it, because we're the ones that typically are talking about giving them a raise, but we're legally not the ones that actually give them a raise. We just give the money, and I think that might,
I would think that, not to interrupt you, but I think that MNPS would be very interested to see what the outcome of this $1 million study is that we're assuming is gonna be this panacea, and I hope that it is. But if they're looking at how we do steps, how we do COLA, how often are we doing pay studies for individual type jobs, right? I think they would be really interested, because to me, it's across the board. Metro is incredibly diverse with different departments and different job titles and experience and education requirements and all that kind of stuff. And so I would think it'd be easy for them to look at that, and they absolutely do need to.
yeah, so I would hope they would be in the conversation, or at least, notified that we're having this conversation.
Sure.
You may wanna have it too.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Certainly if we're doing a resolution on it, it's easy to add in, right? It's not.
Yeah, to share
non-binding,
with them, share our findings with MNPS.
Right.
Sure, I'll add that in there, for sure.
I guess my question would be, the CPI has a number of different indices.
Yeah.
So is this one that is consistently used, or
So-
should that be a part of the study to determine if that's the right index
So
within CPI?
Well, there's CPI-U and there's CPI-W. So CPI-U, and this is like weeks ago that I was looking at this, they've always used CPI-U, I believe. And so at that point, I really don't care if you choose CPI-U or CPI-W. There's only two types of CPI. There's all kinds of numbers that make up CPI, but it's an average of those things. I don't care which one they choose, as long as they're consistent. Because this year they tried to bounce different things. It's like, nope, if you're gonna use a number to base COLA off of, it needs to be the same number every single year.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay. So, could I get a motion to defer 2 meetings?
yep.
So maybe-
Second.
All right, moved and seconded to defer 2 meetings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? All right, motion carries 5 in favor, 0 against. Please stick around, I know
Yep.
you know we've got another one for you. All right, next we have BL 2023-2006 by Parker, Pulley, Bradford, and Welsh. This designates the Department of Codes Administration and the Department of Transportation and Multimodal Infrastructure to meet the definition of, quote, police department, end quote, as authorized in Tennessee Code Section 55-16-1036 and as used in that part, and to amend Section 6.80.540 of the Metropolitan Code for the limited purpose of allowing codes and NDOT to also authorize the removal of abandoned vehicles by towing or transportation by emergency wrecker licensees in emergency circumstances as defined in Chapter 6.80, Article 5 of the Metropolitan Code. Could I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Councilmember Parker, this is a great bill I'm excited about.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, this bill came from, just feedback from my constituents, and looking into an issue, which is that, lots of the abandoned vehicles that were being reported to Hub Nashville around the community were not being addressed. I looked into it, found out that we had a certain kind of contractor. That contractor quit the business. We bid this out twice to get a similar arrangement for abandoned vehicle program, and there were no respondents twice. And so I went to the administration and asked them to, take a good solid look at this, and to their credit, they have been working on this. Kristen Wilson, Teresa Costonis, Mike Jamison, others, the departmental folks, NDOT codes have been working on this. What they came up with is essentially, I might be explaining it wrong, so I hope someone here will correct me if I am, but allowing the same emergency towing contracts that MNPD currently utilizes, which are zone-based, and it's very complicated, but the folks, everything I've heard seems to think this is actually going to work. But basically allowing NDOT and codes the ability to utilize those contracts, which they can't do today. And hopefully passage of this will allow us to begin working through the backlog of abandoned vehicles that we all have in our communities, some more than others. I'm happy to show you all around District 5 if you'd like to see quite the collection.
Awesome. Any questions, any discussion?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councilmember Cash.
I appreciate it's a problem we need solved, and I just wonder the part of it, to meet the definition of police department, and I see that it says, in limited purpose, but does it open up anything else? I'm trying to get my head around meet the definition of police department. And
So this is a field that's like deeply constrained by state law, is my understanding, and
towing?
yes, specifically abandoned vehicles and how those are handled. So this is my understanding, the approach that Teresa Costonis and others deemed necessary. We have the director of NDOT here. We have a representative from Codes. They might be able to speak better to why that. This is a bill that I worked with the administration on drafting and with departments on drafting, but I did not draft the language line by line here. This was coming from the departmental folks. So, can we go to the director of NDOT perhaps, if she would like to speak?
Director Alarcon?
Yes, hi. So the way Teresa had drafted it would give us the ability to act underneath the police department by them giving us authority. And so right now, we do not have that ability whatsoever. This is giving the police the ability to give us the authority so we can interact with their contracts and actually help with the towing issues that we have in the city. And we can use it through the emergency towing, which is actually regulated through the Transportation Licensing Commission. So it's a very well thought out program. And there is, in each one of the emergency towing companies that we have throughout the county, actually have to follow a very particular guideline that the state has set out. So it's already kind of handled, and this is just allowing us that authority to assist the police with the towing, so it's not on them, completely on them. So I think if you look at it that way, where we're assisting, that's what this is given the authority for the police to say, go assist.
Makes sense to me, and I'm in favor of it. And I think NDOT kind of taking more responsibility for car instances is a good move forward.
Okay,
I think it's a good bill. Yeah.
thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Councilmember Swope has come out of another committee and has joined us, so that passes 6 in favor, 0 against, 0 abstaining. On to BL 2023-2007 by Johnston. This amends section 7.08.090 of the Metropolitan Code regarding location restrictions pertaining to beer permits. Councilmember, oh yeah. Moved, can I get a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded,
I think
Councilmember
everybody needs a
Johnston.
beer. I'm just kidding. Hannah laughs.
Wait, what'd you say?
Farrah Lacone
What did,
left.
what did you say?
I said I think everybody needs a beer.
Oh,
I
no.
was kidding. It was a bad joke. I'm gonna let Brian Taylor from the beer, he's the chair of the beer board, to explain what this is about because this is their initiative and I'm just the,
Carrier.
yes,
Yeah.
carrier.
Absolutely, thank you. I mean, I would say everybody needs a beer from that wall to this wall. Don't discount us over here, so we all. No, thank you for letting me be here. Councilor Benedict, thank you. And Councilor Johnson, thank you for carrying this. Director is here, Director McDonough is here with me as well. We have seen this come up over the years. Basically, you need a resolution, and you're gonna see it a couple times in this council, or in this committee meeting, as well as council tonight, I believe, to allow a restaurant to violate the 100-foot distance,
Minimum requirement.
minimum requirement. And that's for a permanent on-premise permit. What this does, it gives us the authority to issue special event permits, which there are no allocations for or allowances for that would violate that 100-foot distance requirement, because it is seen to us as a temporary permit. The only way you can waive it is if it's a permanent on-premise. There is no such thing for an off-premise. So what we would like to do is be able to allow folks in the community to host special events. They would go through the process of getting a special event permit, just like they do now, through the beer board. And then we would, criticize is not really the correct term, but we would include some new rules at our level that they have checked with the neighbors. And I think, Mr. Director, one thing we need to add too is just include a message or at least notification to the council members that that is happening. Now, what this does, it just allows them to have beer. Currently, they can go to the TABC and get this same special event permit at this same location, wherever it is, because in a lot of our neighborhoods around the city, you'll be hard pressed to find space that's not public space, but even in private property that won't violate that 100-foot distance requirement if it's a special event, because you're not doing it in someone's house or in a 4,000 square foot location. You want to do it outside. But they can go get a TABC permit today. They don't have to ask you guys, they don't have to ask us. They can go get it and serve Jack Daniels and high gravity beer. What we would like this to do, and what this does, it just allows us to allow a promoter or a host to do this. A couple instances of, like, obvious instances where this already happens in Metro, Oktoberfest. There are two churches that are actually the host of Oktoberfest. It's been going on for years, so it's grandfathered. The other are parks. You know, you have to waive the distance for someone who wants to be within 100 feet of a park. Yet Metro Parks can already give them a beer permit or give them the ability to serve beer, and then they come to us to get the beer permit. So that violation is already occurring if it followed the letter of the law in Metro Code. This will alleviate that.
Great.
Happy to answer questions.
Thank you for that great explanation. Councilmember Cash.
Sorry, I've got lots today. You said check with neighbors, and I just wanted to understand that a little bit. Or does that mean inform them in writing with some sort of contact information on there? Or does it mean, yeah, we talked to
So like, we don't envision it like a rezoning where you have to send a notice to the nearest 600 feet because we're only concerned with that first 100 feet. Staff
Right.
would, in the event they got an application, and the director can clarify some of this to a degree, if it violated that 100-foot encroachment zone, we would probably require them to get authorization or at least get a note or a memo from that entity that's being violated at 100 feet, just to say that they're okay with it. We have an example on the table right now that someone wants to do an event out by the new soccer stadium, in one of the parking lots. But it's either a church or a school that is immediately adjacent to this space. As the law stands right now, they could go out and get high gravity beer and alcohol, but they can't get beer. Low gravity, below 10.2 ABV. So we would put a clause in our rules that just said, give us something from that church or that school that says they're okay with it.
Okay. Any additional discussion?
So, I guess, 100-foot includes any residential, is that right?
Yes, single, two-family residence, school, park, church, playground.
So, I guess I'm okay with y'all developing the guidelines for notice and consent or whatever acknowledgement from those folks, but I mean, it seems a little, like if we're doing a neighborhood block party, as someone who's tried to get signatures for various things up and down a block, I would caution against saying we need, I guess, rather than have every person within the 100-foot have to sign on, maybe you say, like, here's what adequate notice looks like, and then if we get objections, then here's the process for dealing with objections, rather than, because sometimes you can't find a property owner, sometimes you can't find sometimes something's completely not looked after and abandoned, and I trust, I don't think, it sounds to me like those guidelines are not super spelled out in this, but y'all are capable of developing those effectively, so I'm okay with that personally.
Sure. We have rules and regulations behind every type of on-premise, every type of off-premise, every type of mobile beer permit that we already have or that we just created recently. So we'll create what we believe are adequate rules and guidelines and guardrails around this process. We don't see this being a big ordeal. The reality is if you're doing a big block party, you're doing it in public space. That's different. There is already this would kind of tag onto that. Because if you're doing it in public space, you potentially or likely are going to violate that 100-foot distance issue. But if you're doing it in public space, you also have to have a nonprofit that is a beneficiary of the event. That's Metro Code. So there are lots of guardrails in place. We just want to open it up. And the example I gave to Councilor Johnson is in Creve Hall on South Overton. There's this huge open space of land that goes under some TVA guide wires. That's not TVA land. It's private property. They could do an event, and if they charge for it, I can have a party at my house, and we can all come, and if I'm not charging you a ticket fee, I don't need a permit. Mm-hmm. But if I'm doing it and saying, okay, it's $20 to come, and here's your beer, or here's an armband, I'm selling you beer. If I'm selling it, or there's a value, you have to have a permit.
Sure.
But if one house, and there are 5 or 6 that if you stretch it out, you would violate that 100-foot for those properties, we would want to know that they're okay with it.
Sure.
All right.
Thank you.
Great. Good dialogue. Oh, Councilmember.
Sorry,
Grant.
just one more thing. I'm less concerned about the person, the group or people close by absolutely permitting it as much as I am them care more about them knowing if something goes wrong, who do I reach out to remedy it?
Sure. Again, we've begun the process, and part of the process is notification by the owners or the businesses, the church or school or whomever that may be. We can fine tune that, Councilman. Again, I don't see this being something that we're going to see dozens and dozens of. But with the growth of our neighborhoods and with the growth of some of these like super neighborhood centers with open space, you're gonna open up opportunity, but you're also gonna violate that 100-foot distance matter unless this law is changed.
But it doesn't make sense that they can serve Jack Daniels but not a Miller Lite.
That's right. They could go serve high gravity beer and a Jack Daniels all day and not need any of our approval right now.
I'll just add to what our chairman pointed out. In the current application that we have, that's a violation near the soccer stadium. The applicant did obtain a letter of support from the principal of the school, but also we would look at the fact that the event happens on a weekend when kids are not there present on the premises. So that's something else that we would look at. It would really be a case-by-case basis.
Great, good work by that board. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That passes 6 in favor, 0 against. All right, we're gonna, Ms. Ayla, I'm gonna need your help on this next one. Bill 2023-2008 by Syracuse. Is he here, you know?
I don't know that he's here. Do you want me to go check?
Yeah, why don't we move this to
He
the
is,
heel?
okay.
We'll move this to the heel, and we've still got a quorum, so we'll move on to BL 2023-2009 by Parker. This amends the Metropolitan Code Section 16.08.014 and 16.08.016 in order to bring it into compliance with a new state law regarding maximum standards for energy conservation in 1- and 2-family construction projects. Okay, moved and seconded. Councilmember Parker.
So you said it in the caption, this is bringing our 1- and 2-family energy conservation standards into line with recently passed state law. This was an administration bill that I was asked to sponsor. We have Will Dodd here with codes who can explain the actual impact if we'd like to get a little bit of that on record, but otherwise it's my understanding that this is something that we just need to do because of a recent state law change.
Thank you. And I guess my question for Mr. Dodd would be, when we adopted the new code, minimums, I guess, right, a couple years ago, is this taking us, is the new state law taking us, making things less restrictive or more restrictive for a builder
This will be less restrictive.
as compared to what we have currently?
So what we currently have is Metro utilizes the energy conservation standards for 1- and 2-family in the 2018 International Residential Code. Now that's the same exact standards as what you see in the International Energy Code 2018, but the state law says we have to adopt those standards out of that book because that's what the state uses, same standards. But the only change is when the state adopted that, they amended it to say that the 2009 tables for 1- and 2-family are the absolute max that we can enforce. So you do have a lax as far as standards for insulation, blower duct, air duct loss, things like that on 1- and 2-family. They're a little more lax than what we've been doing in 2018.
And I had heard from the development community that the insulation standard that was put in place was, made things more difficult for them, and I believe I would probably term that as cost prohibitive for them. Now, that's up to them and whatever costs their margins are, I don't care. My concerns are, making sure that we get good product out there in the market for people to live in. Hopefully at good pricing as well, so, and we do need good developers who do great things in this city. Councilmember Parker.
If I may, sir, so the two things that I've heard a lot about are, will this allow folks to go back to 2x4 wall construction, or will they still be?
As far as structure, I don't think this changes anything for that. I think it's actually blower duct and actual insulation that goes in that would
But I
change.
think it was the R value that was driving the shift to 2x6.
I'll have to check on that. I don't know about that.
Okay. And the other thing is just I've heard from some builders about really needing to, the way they might term it is hermetically seal homes, and having to pass airflow tests that are very stringent and complicated, and utilizing products that they're concerned are relatively untested over a long course of time. And it sounds like this will maybe alleviate some of those requirements for 1 and 2. But yeah, I am curious about, I would love to know about if the R value thing is what drove the shift from 2x4 to 2x6 for wall frame, and if this would have an impact on that.
Yeah, let me get back with you on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cash?
I was just gonna say, I hear the concern and share the concerns about the cost of building housing. I know one of the purposes of what was going into the 2018, or upping to the 2018, was to reduce energy costs in the home. So I think that's another cost that we should be cognizant of as well.
Thank you. I think, that energy cost gets moved on to the consumer if their home is less energy efficient.
I just don't think we have a lot of leeway to decide that at this point, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Any additional discussion? All All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries 6 in favor, 0 against. Councilmember Syracuse, thank you. I know we've been all bouncing from committee to committee, some of us have as well. Our final bill today is BL 2023-2008 by Syracuse. It amends section 7.16.030 of the Metropolitan Code to exempt a retail location near a secondary tourist development zone from the arterial boulevard requirement. Could I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Councilmember Syracuse, could you explain?
Thank you, Chair. So the Hobbs family have a liquor store that is on McGavick Pike, which is allowed under code. They have another building where the restaurant John A's used to be, and it's literally just a couple 100 feet or so from McGavick Pike, actually on Music Valley Drive, and still within the whole tourist area there. They want to move that over there, so this would just allow, it's very narrowly written to be able to allow them that location, still within, as the bill says, the tourist oriented area, to move their liquor store over there.
And I noticed that, thank you for that, I noticed that in the analysis it mentioned Briley Parkway specifically. Is this so narrow that it's only going to be just for basically that one location? It's not gonna open things up elsewhere in the city?
Exactly.
Okay.
That's how we wrote it, because we didn't want to open up Pandora's box on this, yes. Yeah.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 6 in favor, 0 against, and that ends the agenda. Have a great day. We are adjourned.